In the end, the doctor had his way about the holiday, but not about the cigars. Rooms were booked for us in a place called the Hotel Magnificent in the famous seaside town of Bournemouth. Bournemouth, my grandmother told me, was full of old people like herself. They retired there by the thousand because the air was so bracing and healthy. It kept them, so they believed, alive for a few extra years. "Does it?" I asked. "Of course not," she said. "It's tommy rot. But just for once, I think we've got to obey the doctor." Soon after that, my grandmother and I took the train to Bournemouth and settled into the Hotel Magnificent. It was an enormous white building on the seafront, and it looked to me like a pretty boring place to spend a summer holiday in. I had my own separate bedroom, but there was a door connecting my room with my grandmother's room, so that we could visit each other without going into the corridor. Just before we left for Bournemouth, my grandmother had given to me, as consolation, a present of 2 white mice in a little cage, and of course I took them with me. They were terrific fun, those mice. I called them William and Mary, and in the hotel I set out right away teaching them to do tricks. The first trick I taught them was to creep up the sleeve of my jacket and come out by my neck. Then I taught them to climb up the back of my neck onto the top of my head. I did this by putting cake crumbs in my hair. On the very first morning after our arrival, the chambermaid was making my bed when one of my mice poked its head out from under the sheets. The maid let out a shriek that brought a dozen people running to see who was being murdered. I was reported to the manager. There followed an unpleasant scene in the manager's office with the manager, my grandmother, and me. The manager, whose name was Mr. Stringer, was a bristly man in a black tail coat. "I cannot permit mice in my hotel, madam," he said to my grandmother. "How dare you say that when your rotten hotel is full of rats anyway?" my grandmother cried. "Rats!" cried Mr. Stringer, going mauve in the face. "There are no rats in this hotel." "I saw one this very morning," my grandmother said. "It was running down the corridor into the kitchen." "That is not true," cried Mr. Stringer.